He flicked a black casino marker onto my tray and said loud enough for the chandeliers to lean in. "I'll put 120 grand on the table if you can serve me in Chinese." The marker clacked like a gavel, and the Lakeshore Club went quiet. The piano softened mid-phrase, and every fork froze halfway to someone's mouth. I looked at him. Sutton Hale real estate swagger, and a grin that asked for applause. Then at the three investors sitting with him, people who clearly didn't sign up for a sideshow, and I heard my own voice say yes before my fear had time to vote. You know what I mean, that moment when the room decides what you are, and you have to decide back. He added the cruelty clause because men like Sutton can't resist a flourish. 5 dishes in Chinese full presentation, no single words, or I kneel and apologize for wasting everyone's time. And I said fine, but let's make it real. I'll describe dishes, regions, technique, meaning if I do it right, you double it to 240. If I fail, I work a month for free. The room breathed in like a wave and didn't let the air out. The maitre d' hesitated, then stepped aside because politeness in a place like this always leans toward the biggest check. The special menu arrived in a leather jacket of a book, pages of characters and chef notes. We only use on diplomatic nights, and Sutton said, "No help, no cues, no whispering from the crowd," as if honesty was his idea. I asked a simple question, not for drama, but for fairness. "Is anyone here fluent in Mandarin?" The woman in charcoal raised her hand and said, "Yes. Lived in Taipei, grew up in Vancouver." The younger investor added that he studied in Nanjing. The older one nodded that he could follow. Sutton rolled his shoulders like victory belonged to his posture, and I took a breath so deep I swear the lights dimmed a notch. Then I stepped back into a room I used to live in every day. "Gowei, Wan Shanghao." "Good evening," I began, voice steady like a train finding its rail. "We'll start with Sichuan Mapo Tofu, Pixian Dubanjiang, 2 years, fermented the balance of heat and numb the way an old song finds its harmony." I shifted between English and Mandarin like a friendly tour guide, who grew up in both neighborhoods. The woman in charcoal leaned forward, the young guy smiled without meaning to. Sutton blinked, not a lot, but enough. Second dish, Peking duck hanging oven fruit wood skin, that shatters, then gives knife work, that doesn't rush because patience is flavor. I could feel the room leaning just an inch, but when a room like this leans, it changes gravity. I switched lanes not to flex, but to put the map on the table. Cantonese now. 如果是香港将你为菜，我弟会将茶楼开穿成点心，师傅手上开时间. If you hear this dish in a Hong Kong tea house, you hear inheritance and time in a dim sum master's hands. The charcoal woman let out the tiniest. Wow, and yeah, that happened. I didn't stop. Third dish. Shanghai Xiaolong, bao 18 folds. Not superstition, but discipline. Thin skin that holds a tide. 1 bite is craft. 2 bites is good manners. Fourth dish, Xi'an, Liangpi street wind. In a bowl, chewy wheat, gluten, and vinegar, like a summer window opening. Fifth dish, Cantonese steamed fish, simple on the plate. Merciless in the technique. Right? Temperature, right, timing, restraint. Like a prayer. I asked if they wanted the Taiwanese angle in a little Hokkien, and gave a few lines, then gathered everyone back in English because language is a house, and I wanted the whole room in the same kitchen. Sutton tried to laugh it off. Cute a script anybody can memorize sounds. And the older investor beat me to the punch. She didn't memorize, she knows, he said. Then he asked where I learned, and I saw 2 roads: deflect or tell the truth, so I told it. Northwestern linguistics, speech processing, and dialects. Months in Taipei, a summer in Chengdu, research on how people talk about food when they're really talking about home. Then life took a left turn. My mom's aneurysm rehab bills that redefined math universities move on. When you step back, the Lakeshore Club did not. Sutton smirked, like my story was a magic trick with a string showing. So I brought it back to terms, 5 dishes full, context. Double if I delivered, and he tried to wriggle. We're not actually bringing out the food, so technically. And that's when the woman in charcoal set her napkin down, like a judge who's done listening, and said, "Sutton, stop, I'm Elena. I'm fluent. He knows enough. He knows enough, and you know what just happened." Maya didn't bluff. She turned knowledge into gravity. The word landed. The room held it. Sutton looked around and counted 0 allies. He scribbled a cashier's check. 240, slid it across the linen. I checked the routing and the name because drama is drama and rent is rent. Then I told him. There was one more thing, not theater, just human. An apology, not to me. To everyone he'd tested like a toy to feel taller. He tried the whisper apology. First, the room wasn't having it. So he stood and said it for real, not polished, not pretty, but clear, "I'm sorry." And no one clapped, we just let the quiet close like a door. The fallout didn't come like thunder. It drifted inside doors. Elena asked for my number as they were leaving and said we're building a cross-cultural team because guessing what people mean is expensive. You don't guess. 2 weeks later, I was on the 33rd floor of a River North tower, windows to the lake conference table that could double as a runway. They didn't ask me to perform. They asked what I would build. So I told them I'd design listening tools that map culture to product. That translation is not just words, it's manners, timing. What you leave unsaid, they nodded, like that sentence had been waiting on a shelf with my name on it. I took the job Director of Cultural Systems, a title that felt like a bridge between every version of me. The salary made my shoulders drop. The health insurance made my mother's rehab finally look payable by a person and not a miracle. I worked my notice at the club with gratitude for the education I didn't know I was getting. Because people tell on themselves when they order, what they're afraid to waste, what they're afraid to try. I wrote those notes the way I used to annotate phonetics, a different textbook, same curiosity. Sutton tried to rewrite history for about a week, called the club, said I set him up the GM, shut it down with security notes that might as well have been skywriting. Then he went quiet. The big deal he had lined up with Elena's firm never inked publicly. It was scheduling privately. It was character. The club didn't ban him. Money doesn't get banned. But the inches between him and other people grew. Distance is a language too, he noticed. They always do, months later. I saw him at a literacy fundraiser, different suit, same cologne, smaller posture. He came over and said he owed me a personal apology, not to a room, to a person, I told him. He'd already given one. He said he deserved to lose that night, and hoped I spent his money in a way that made him look like a moron. I said we did my mother's rehab and a very boring savings account. He laughed. Oh, boring is underrated. And for once we stood in a middle distance that felt human. Not friends, not enemies, just two people who had been unkind and kind to each other in different rooms at different times. Here's the part people argue about, and maybe you will too. The video of that night leaked it, hopped to a finance site, then a foodie blog, then a Reddit thread that turned into a debate about race, class tipping power. The comments did what comments do. One stranger called me a gold digger, another called me a hero. Neither knew me. The truth is smaller and messier. I was someone at work who got dared to be herself, and for once didn't back down. And yes, Sutton took a hit. Deals ripple assistants and receptionists. Feel shockwaves they didn't sign up for. Do I own that? I sit with it. Grace isn't a one-time check. It's a monthly bill. I pay it late. Sometimes I try to catch up. The night this story settled for me, I spoke to young founders at a Southside incubator. My mom sat in the front in a robe that made her look like retired royalty. I told them you don't beat arrogance by yelling. You make arrogance overhear itself. You do your work so specifically that the room changes shape around it. And if you miss a tone, you correct and keep going. Because the point was never perfection. The point was refusing to be a toy on the drive home. The lake was slate, and the city felt like it finally had room for both of my names, server and director, daughter and builder. And I thought about Sutton's face at the exact second the room stopped clapping for him, not rage, surprise like he'd never seen himself from that angle. Maybe that was the gift, a mirror he didn't buy. If you were in that dining room, would you have taken the bet or walked away? Would you have pushed for the apology or kept it private? Do public humiliations teach anything true or just feed the crowd? Tell me what you think in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is, and if you've ever been underestimated. Drop the one thing you did next that changed the room. I'm listening.